What's up people, today I'll be ranking every Dark Souls boss from worst to best and then adding them to a tier list, and let's just get started. Moonlight Butterfly sucks balls. I'd have more fun watching paint dry, and if I wanted a projectile dodging simulator, I'd go to an American high school. F tier. If you want to go for a 5-minute jog, just fight Gwendolyn, but instead of beautiful views and nature, you get AIDS. This is yet another projectile dodging simulator, but this time you can get one shot at any time, so F tier. Ceaseless Discharge. This fight is just boring. He attacks once every 12 seconds, and then you smack his arm, which is just standing still. And if he happens to spew his fire beam attack, then you're most likely fucked. And he's overall just very boring. E tier. Demon Fire Sage is a sad loser who has no friends, which is why I don't like him. I see too much of myself in him. Now, most of my disdain for him comes from where he's placed and the fact that it's the second Asylum Demon reskin. His explosion attack is bullshit and there's almost no way to evade it in that small ass arena. Yeah, he gets E tier. Pinwheel is just too easy. He could have been a cool boss if he had more health and a less shitty arena. And Naruto had better Shadow Clone Jutsu when he was 5 years old, so yeah, he's just no, D tier. Straight Demon is the other Asylum Demon reskin, but his arena is a bit cooler and wider, and he's completely optional. But it's still just not a fun fight, especially when he spams the same attack 10 times in a row. D tier. Seath has laser attacks that are slow and inaccurate, but leave the ground riddled with curse crystals, and if you die, your life gets permanently cut in half until you eat some rock. So if you enjoy stepping on Legos and getting cancer, you'll probably like this fight. D tier. Iron Golem is just alright. He's pretty slow and easy to dodge, especially if you just run through his crotch. I do think it's fun when he throws you off the map, but I am a bit of a masochist, so C tier. Gaping Dragon's fight is honestly very mid, but his design is so good, and I like the arena too. The wizard makes the fight a living hell, but once he's dealt with, it's easy and cool looking, which honestly I appreciate. C tier. Nito would be a pretty good boss if he didn't have infinitely respawning skeletons in his fucking arena. The scream stab thingy is fun to dodge, even if it is kinda bullshit, and his sword looks cool, but other than that, he's pretty meh. C tier. Asylum Demon is a good introduction boss, but it's a shame he's reused twice, so he isn't as fun on the replays. He's easy if you're experienced in Souls games, but can be hard on a first playthrough, especially if you don't get the plunge attack, and he's way better than Vanguard Demon. C tier. Capper Demon is Miyazaki trying to warn us about what happens if you go down the wrong alleyway in the back ends of Tokyo. You get jumped by a psycho dual-wielding machetes and his 2 dogs. It's a solid fight, not as hard or unfair as most people say, but it's still just not that fun, especially since Capper Demon is a normal enemy that you can fight like 17 times later on in the game. C tier. Priscilla is pretty obviously a predecessor to Sister Frida, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I really like Sister Frida, so I am a bit biased. Scythe bosses are just so cool, and the invisibility gimmick is fun when it's used like this, but she's kinda like too easy to be anything special, so yeah, C tier. Bed of Chaos. Now hear me out. There's no other fight like this one, so it's a truly unique experience. When you're watching someone play Dark Souls for the first time, what boss would you most want to watch them fight? For me, that's usually Bed of Chaos. I also don't think it's that hard overall. It is on a first playthrough, but if you're just careful, take it solo and look around you, it really isn't hard. It's still kind of bullshit sometimes, but not that hard. I get why people hate this boss, but personally, I have fun with it, but still C tier. Centipede Demon looks very cool and has some fun attacks, but then he's in a shit arena and he doesn't like to do his fun attacks often and decides to just stomp on you until you run out of Estus. B tier. Siv's fight is fun, but it also feels pretty outdated and janky, especially with the weapon I was using. But I could also say that about most other bosses in this game. He does have amazing lore, and it's a big wolf. Who doesn't love wolves? B tier. Bell Gargoyles is honestly a pretty solid gank boss, just do not, whatever you do, go into it underprepared. They were the bane of my existence in my first playthrough. Their fire can be annoying and their range is kinda absurd, but it could always get worse. B tier. Quelaag is just one of the most solid bosses in the game. I can't complain much about her, and she has some cool elements and a pretty diverse moveset. Her lava acts as a barrier that you need to play around, which is pretty unique. Her explosions do a lot of damage, but once you know the signs, they're pretty easy to dodge. Her sword kinda just sucks, but it can catch you off guard, and her design is just perfection. B tier. Taurus Demon, honestly I was very close to putting him in A tier, but he has so many options to fight him. Jump on top of his head, push him off the edge, or just a straight up one-on-one fist fight. And the best part is, he's super early on, so you don't need to worry about if your weapon is upgraded or if you're too under-leveled, which I just think is great. He's also just a solid boss with a solid moveset, though I do think his aim is a bit too good and his slime attacks have a bit too big of a hitbox, so B tier. Sanctuary Guardian is fast, fun, and fragile. He's one of the most aggressive bosses in the game and is very fun to dodge, but his health is so low that the fight kind of just ends and doesn't feel that satisfying, and is very overshadowed by the rest of the DLC, so A tier. Four Kings is just a very unique fight. The arena is pitch black and it's just such a vibe. The way they look like they're getting bigger and bigger as they come close to you is just perfection. It's such a hype moment at the end of the game. A tier. Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, is super aggressive, which can be annoying at first when you can't get a heal off, but when you get used to it, it's a very satisfying fight. And even if you just parry him, it's very easy but still very satisfying. A tier. Ornstein and Smo. I mean, there's a reason this fight is so iconic. It's just, it hits all the spots. Final boss of an iconic area, and after you beat them, the game changes completely for better or for worse. It's a very well balanced gank boss, and the second phase is just an extra cherry on top that makes this fight great. S tier. Black Dragon Calamite is still one of the best dragon fights in this series. The cutscene building up to it with the old giant guy is absolute perfection. He's almost perfectly balanced, so he's very hard but still a very fun fight. And no bullshit moves to take you out of it. S tier. Knight Artorias is the perfect fight for the time it came out. Nowadays it feels a bit too easy since we've gotten Shadow of the Erdtree, but it's still one of the harder bosses in this game, and the fact that you're fighting Artorias at like 1% of his power or whatever just makes it that much better. S tier. At number 1, my favorite boss in Dark Souls 1, Manus, Father of the Abyss. I will never forget the first time I fought this boss and how much I struggled with him, and when I eventually beat him, it was one of the most satisfying moments I've had in any Souls game, or any game as a matter of fact. Truly an amazing final boss for the DLC, which makes you forget all of the bad moments this game had. S tier. Alright, thanks for watching. I'm not very happy with this video, but it's whatever. Dark Souls 2 has been fully edited, the full game and the DLC. It will be a separate video. And I quickly just want to go over this, as I did with the Demon Souls video. So, my deaths, I had 139 deaths total, over 17.9 hours of gameplay, which comes out to 1 death every 7.7 minutes, which is honestly a lot lower than I expected. And you'll see with Dark Souls 2, that's like quite of a different story. And yeah, in this one, I had the most deaths on bosses, which Demon Souls, it was normal enemies that had the most deaths. Fall, again, pretty high, just like Demon Souls. And then Dragon, ranged enemies, and like traps, poison, lava, whatever, pretty low. Kinda expected ranged enemies to be higher, but I think for Dark Souls 2, I will not make separate videos for hardest bosses and worst/best bosses, because I didn't want to reuse like everything I talked about in the other video, so I kinda just didn't have many things to talk about in this video. So I'll probably do them in one video, and I hope to see you there.